Hello.
Hello, Andrew.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. How are you? Can you hear me all right?
Definitely.
Good.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm still figuring out this myself.
Well, that went pretty easily. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having
Uh, what?
Thank you for having me.
Yes,
Happy
of
to be here.
course. Um, I want to talk about War of the Worlds. I want to talk about your work as an author, what we can expect from you in bookstores. Um, Before we dive into that, I just want to just do my own shameless plug, and you can get a Camp Kaiju T-shirt, and proceeds support this channel for cool content like this. So enough about me. Andrew, you are an author of science fiction. Is that right? Is that the only thing?
Yeah, mostly. That's all that's been published so far. I've got one book out that came out in 2017, a young adult novel, um, not alien invasion, but sort of a first contact kind of story, and like planetary colonization.
Cool.
And then book coming out in 2022 in March. Not aliens, that's post-apocalyptic. It's called the Temps, and it's about a group of temps, office workers, like contract temporary office workers, who get stuck in like a really big office complex while there's like a sort of like a zombie apocalypse type thing happening outside. So it's like, I mean, I call it, at least in terms of the story premise, um, we sometimes call it, me and my publisher, like Office Space meets Dawn of the Dead. So that's kind of the premise.
Love it.
But I write crime fiction as well. Just haven't published any of that yet. So the two
Oh.
novels that are either out or coming so far have been science fiction.
Well, those are, man, those are among my favorite genres to read
I
to begin
know.
with.
Yeah.
So get your crime novel out there.
I hope to. I hope to. I'll send it your way. You'll be the first one to read it.
All right, we'll talk later. We'll talk
Yeah,
after
sure.
post show. So, as an author, what or and writing in the genre of science fiction, what are your thoughts on H.G. Wells and this novel? Is he? Are you Team Wells or Team Verne?
Well, I've read more Wells than Verne. I haven't read much Wells, but I've certainly read this, and I think The Time Machine, and maybe one other.
Hmm.
Um, I read this book when I don't know, I was young. I was maybe like 12 or something like that, and I really liked it. And I was actually kind of reading the plot summary recently,
Hmm.
um, and had forgotten a lot about it. I mean, like a lot of the stuff that's in the Steven Spielberg adaptation was actually in the book, like the red blood
Yeah.
weeds, like that was in the book. I had no idea. I just remembered the tripods and like
Hmm.
blowing things up. I mean, it's something that as a kid you really get into. But yeah, I'm Team Wells definitely in terms of the classic folks. And then I mean, I've read a lot of the old, like, sort of seminal monster or science fiction texts. I think most people say that, like, Mary Shelley started the whole thing with Frankenstein,
That's
and
true. Yeah.
Bram Stoker's Dracula. So a lot of the old stuff is a lot of fun.
Yeah. I forget about. Yeah, because I've obviously read Frankenstein, and
Yeah,
you read like the Wikipedia like science fiction. It's like Jules Verne and H.G. Wells, but I think we should give more credit to the woman who wrote a science fiction story
yeah.
200 years ago.
Well, and she wrote one. She wrote a post-apocalyptic book about
What?
like the last man on Earth. I think it was actually called The Last Man. I haven't read this one, but like she wrote a couple of science fiction
Wow.
novels actually, that people don't know about. But
Wow.
yeah,
Cool. Cool plug for Mary Shelley.
yeah. There you go. Check her out, everybody. Mary Shelley's great.
um, I'm with you on War of the Worlds, especially the Spielberg adaptation. So
Yeah.
I got into it also in middle school. I've got my copy right here. I only read this one once because it is a little longer than like the Time Machine. Um, but I always loved it. And but I remember not really gravitating towards the Spielberg movie. Like
Yeah,
I saw it in theaters. Someone got me the DVD for Christmas, and I literally forgot I owned it until we started talking about this, you know, doing this conversation.
interesting.
Yeah, so my bar was really low actually.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I forgot that Spielberg directed it because in my mind it's like, oh, it's that Tom Cruise blockbuster. But um, yeah, I've got some thoughts knowing now that it's a Spielberg movie and where it falls in his canon. But what did you think? Like, what were the good things? What stuck out to you about the movie?
Well, I mean, I watched this in the theater way back when, in 2005. I had been paying a lot of attention to Spielberg back then because he'd been directing some movies that I found interesting. I mean, starting with like AI and
Minority
Minority
Report?
Report. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was doing some like dark science fiction stuff
Mm-hmm.
there in the early aughts. And so I was excited about this and definitely wanted to see it in the theater, like, and went into it thinking like, oh, this is a Spielberg movie. I'm pumped about it. Um, and I think that a lot of it's really great. I mean, I was looking up some rankings of Spielberg films, and some people put it toward the bottom of the list, and some people actually put
Sure.
it toward the top of their list. And I think that that is because it's actually fairly inconsistent. Like, I think that there's a lot of great stuff in the first half. In fact, I think that much of the first half is as good as anything that Spielberg has ever done in any movie. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I really do think the dynamic, like the family dynamic between, you know, Tom Cruise as the estranged father and these two kids, who, you know, need him but really resent him at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting dynamic. And
Mm-hmm.
then some of like the really cinematic sequences, I think that like the whole thing under the shadow of the bridge, like starting with the scary storm sky
Yeah.
and kind of ending with the big like initial reveal of the machine coming up from underground.
Yeah.
That that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
like amazing stuff. And then the other one that really sticks out for me is trying to cross the river in that ferry.
Oh my God.
Um, just a just a terrifying scene. Just a terrifying scene, and
So yeah.
it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, yeah, so my good for this movie is exactly what you just said. The reveal of the tripod gave me chills, and that was the first time watching it I went, okay, okay, now
Yeah,
you've got my attention. Like,
that's right.
and people being obliterated the way they were. Um, this is like for a longer conversation, but I was considering its place in the early aughts, post 9/11, and I was like, this is intense. And then that river scene, I was taking notes and I wrote, this is a stressful movie.
Yeah, yeah, it's stressful.
It's
It is.
way more stressful than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
And doing my own research, Spielberg at the time, he'd made E.T. and Close Encounters, and he said he wanted to make a scary alien movie for once.
yeah,
And I think he
he did
was
it.
putting some energy into that. Um, it's interesting you like the first half, like with the family dynamics.
Yeah,
I didn't, but I see what you mean. Like it worked. Like I get it. Like there was nothing fundamentally wrong with it. It was
sure.
just a personal thing where I couldn't believe that Tom Cruise is such a bad communicator with his children.
Yeah, and like he's legitimately like a bad father in the movie,
Yeah,
and he's a really bad dad. There's even something where it's a subtle thing, but like he's telling his son Robbie to get back in the house, and he does something with his hands at some point that kind of like
yeah.
he does that, which makes you think that like he's threatening like actual violence against
Or
his son.
he's hit him or something. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, this is he's not a good father.
and I
Like,
and
yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
trying to and I want to be specific because it's fine to have unlikable characters in stories.
For sure.
You want that. I think, and it's totally personal. Maybe it's not a fair criticism, but I think Tom Cruise, casting wise, who I love, typically he's like a great dramatic actor, but he's also really likable as an actor for me.
You want
And
to like,
so it just kind of was a little jarring to see him play such an asshole. But I
Yeah.
was like, that's hard for me to believe, but I'll go with it.
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of cringy. I feel like even the scene where he's making peanut butter sandwiches for the kids, and
Yeah.
he's trying to be really funny, and he's like, he's like dealing the bread like they're cards, and they're just like, Dad, you're a jerk. Like it's awkward to see him try so hard and to be so
Hmm.
bad at it. But that is the Spielberg thing. I mean, I think that's what I like about it is that this is the interesting thing about old stories that get adapted and readapted, is that every time they get readapted, they get filtered through a new cultural context, which is kind of what you were talking about with like the post 9/11 context. And you've even got the daughter saying, is it the terrorists? She thinks that it's the terrorists
Yeah.
attacking and not aliens.
Yeah.
But then you've also got Spielberg bringing his concerns to the table, and Close Encounters and E.T., which you mentioned, both have like absent fathers or fathers abandoning their children, and it's just a concern that comes through
Yeah.
in a lot of his work. I mean, I think it's an interesting dynamic in the
Hmm.
movie, and it for me, once Robbie leaves, there's these three people.
Hmm.
He's always saving the kids, but every time he saves them, eventually like they might hug him or something like that, but then they'll go to each other,
Yeah.
and then he'll literally be like visually isolated from them.
Mm.
So that's like a thing that Spielberg is doing over and over again, which is like he's trying so hard and he's literally saving the kids from dying, but they still don't trust him. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of the dynamic of the first half of the film. Then Robbie leaves, and then they go, instead of like the third character who kind of replaces Robbie is this like kind of crazy guy played by Tim Robbins. And
Yeah.
that for me is the moment that the movie goes like decisively south. I don't think that very much in that like basement cellar with Tim Robbins works very much at all.
The movie just kind of settles,
Yeah,
and I mean, literally, they have settled into a basement,
into a basement.
which it keeps the halting of that action. Like the physical action has stopped, the story has stopped. A lot of stuff's happening outside the windows,
It is.
but I don't think it's maybe there's an effective way to still keep it compelling, but I
Well,
don't. I think it's lacking too. Yeah.
it gets a little confused or something. I don't love the Tim Robbins performance. Like the accent that he's doing is a little bit strange.
Mm.
Um, I don't totally know what his deal is. Like he seems to have some theories about like what's going on that don't really add up. And
Hmm.
I mean, just cinematically, like Spielberg is such a cinematic director. Like he's always telling the story visually. And I just think that once they get into that basement, things are a little bit less interesting
Yeah.
visually. And they do it's kind of like a repeat of that scene from Jurassic Park where they're hiding from the raptors in the kitchen.
Yeah. I thought the
They
same thing.
they do that, but it's not as good as the Jurassic Park scene. And they kind of do it twice. They do it with kind of this like the aliens send this sort of periscope thing and they're hiding from the
Hmm.
periscope. And then that leaves and you breathe a sigh of relief. But then some actual aliens come in.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, now we're doing the same scene
Right.
again, and it just kind of feels redundant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to say, this is Camp Kaiju. I think that one of the more damning things about this movie is that the design of the aliens is not that scary to me.
Well,
Well,
I
I'm interested in your opinion.
no, I thought about that too because it really struck me that they have very like they have big eyes and they have round faces and they look really friendly actually.
They kind of look cute, actually, in,
Yeah,
in some ways.
and I don't know I kind of liked messing with our expectations in
That's
that
interesting.
way. Like these things will actually they want to eat you. Like they're terrifying monsters, but they look
But they
cute and
look kind of
adorable.
cute. Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
interesting perspective, actually. Maybe I should give him a little bit more of a pass. I was kind of uninspired, but but maybe it's actually not so bad.
I don't know. I think in that way with the alien design, Spielberg's harkening back to maybe like a more 50s version of what a Martian is like. They have like big fingers and they have big faces. And I kind of like that, tapping back into our preconceived notions of what a Martian is rather than giving us something new like the monsters in a quiet place or something really weirdly terrifying.
Well, and like Independence Day, which you've seen, I feel like Independence Day drew
Yeah.
a lot from like the H.R. Geiger um, design of the aliens in like the Alien movies.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I feel like
and like,
that,
these are different than that.
yeah.
So,
I didn't, I feel like the alien design from Alien, I feel like I see that a lot in contemporary alien movies,
yeah,
like Independence Day and A Quiet Place. They have big arms and
huge
I don't
head.
know. I wanted a throwback alien.
So this kind of met your
Yeah,
expectations for monsters.
yeah. But for a over 100-year-old story,
Yeah.
it's kind of what I wanted.
Well, and then the other thing that always kind of throws me about the middle to the end of the movie is that you start to get actual speculation about what the aliens want, and you get this thing where they're harvesting humans for their blood to
Yeah,
create like weird plants, and it just kind of it doesn't make sense because like they're vaporizing humans. If they're coming to harvest our blood, why are they killing people? It
true.
it's visually compelling.
Yeah,
Um, the the um the red like veiny weeds are just like so disgusting
yeah,
and amazing. But it never made sense to me. But then I looked it up, and it's like it's in the movie. I always thought that, or it's in the original book, and I always thought that that was something that some screenwriter brought to the thing. But no, it's original. I had no
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, me neither. And honestly, it just makes me realize I should reread the book. And I really want to now. I mean,
Yeah,
I've got a dozen other books I want to read, including your own. I want to read The Exo Project.
thank you.
Got it right back there somewhere. Actually,
Me versus Wells. I won't be.
well, well, alphabetically, you're next to Philip K. Dick. So
Oh, that's pretty good.
I feel like it's a
That.
good combo there.
I'll accept that. Yeah, for sure.
Um, yeah, okay,
Well,
one more thing.
yeah, go ahead.
Let's just indulge ourselves really quick. One good thing I liked about it towards like the middle to the end. Oh, the battle, the ridge where Robbie goes running off.
Yeah, that's a great
I
scene.
thought, whoa, it all makes sense. It's a war of the worlds, and Spielberg is tapping into his Saving Private Ryan
Yeah,
experience. It felt very like a war movie. And with all the crowds of people, they felt like refugees moving through camps, you know, and I was like, okay, this is Spielberg knows what he's doing here, and I really appreciated that.
yeah, and it's definitely like all the feelings, all the like post 9/11 feelings, even like Katrina a little bit, you know, people
Yeah,
becoming refugees. Like there's a lot of stuff going on in there, and a lot of stuff that I feel like Spielberg was processing from recent history.
yeah.
So
Well, what do you think? Do you think this is going to be a modern classic, or do you think we won't be talking about this in 10, 20 years?
I think that it will be talked about as kind of like an oddity of Spielberg's body of work. I think that people will talk about it because I specifically think that that sequence of movies that we talked about, AI,
Mm,
Minority Report, and then this one,
yeah,
they're darker than his usual thing, and it's hard to know where to fit the movies. Like there are people who say like AI is my favorite, you know, of the Spielberg movies, and I feel like people are going to be making arguments like that
yeah,
about this one. Like it's too weird and compelling to ignore as in his body of work.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
I,
that's my feeling.
I can agree with that. I'm going to call it, as far as Spielberg's canon, it's an underrated
Yeah,
classic.
I think that's true.
I think people should give it a second look for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you.
great. This is a really fun story to nerd out on, and we didn't even touch the radio drama. There's a 50s version. There's a TV show out right now, which I only just discovered.
Me too. Yeah.
Um, so much, but let's just start with reading it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. See you around, Andrew. Thanks a
Thanks so
lot.
much.
Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Wow. Thank you all for hanging out with Andrew and I as we discussed Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds. And just want to give you a quick reminder, engage with Camp Kaiju, buy a t-shirt, but most importantly, engage with Andrew. You can find his handle in the down below, and pre-order his book, The Temps, buy the Exo Project, and have yourself a good time reading some fun science fiction or post-apocalyptic Dawn of the Dead stuff. All right, thanks a lot, everybody. See ya.